In the silent darkness of an Australian forest, a hidden infrared camera captured an unusual scene. A feral cat had just brought down its prey and was preparing to eat. But suddenly, a terrifying growl echoed through the night. The cat, startled, abandoned its kill and disappeared into the darkness. A few seconds later, a short, stocky creature with an enormous jaw entered the frame, calmly seized the carcass, and began feeding on it. It was a Tasmanian devil, an animal that had just returned to mainland Australia after 3,000 years of absence. The strange thing is that this animal is far too slow to chase down feral cats. It does not even actively hunt or eat these invasive predators. So how could its presence cause feral cat numbers to decline sharply inside protected areas? Before this bone-crushing predator returned, mainland Australia was already trapped in a silent but devastating crisis. Every night, an estimated 3 million native animals were being killed. Their enemies were not extreme weather events, but two invasive predators, feral cats and red foxes. Australia's feral cats are nothing like ordinary household pets. They are extremely powerful predators, capable of weighing up to 7 kilograms, with night vision around 6 times more effective than that of humans and exceptionally fast reflexes. From desert lizards to small marsupials such as numbats and bilbies, almost everything can become easy prey. The core problem is that Australia's native wildlife evolved in almost complete isolation for millions of years. Many species had never faced predators capable of moving as quietly as cats or foxes. When they hear an unfamiliar sound in the bushes, instead of immediately running away, some native animals instinctively freeze and observe. That hesitation can become the moment that gets them killed. The situation is even worse with red foxes. Foxes display a behavior known as surplus killing. When they enter an area with abundant prey, a single fox may kill multiple animals in succession, even after it is already full and cannot consume any more. For decades, conservationists tried almost everything: traps, poison bait, professional hunters, and electric fences, stretching for thousands of kilometers. Yet populations of these invasive predators continued to expand rapidly. They eventually realized that an ecological problem could not always be solved through artificial methods alone. Australia needed a native predator large enough to put pressure on cats and foxes. Dingoes could perform that role, but they were also large enough to attack sheep, creating serious conflict with the livestock industry. Conservationists needed an ideal candidate smaller than a dingo, so it would pose less danger to livestock, yet aggressive enough to make feral cats think twice. The Tasmanian devil appeared to be the perfect answer. But there was one major problem the animal expected to help restore an entire continent was itself standing on the brink of extinction because of one of the rarest diseases in the world. Tasmanian devils were once widely distributed across the wild landscapes of mainland Australia. But around 3,200 years ago, they disappeared completely from the mainland after larger dingoes arrived, hunted cooperatively, and competed for food. The devil's last refuge was the island of Tasmania, where dingoes never crossed the sea. For thousands of years, the island remained a safe sanctuary. Then, in 1996, a devastating disease outbreak emerged. Researchers discovered wild Tasmanian devils carrying large tumors across their faces. The disease was DFTD, a transmissible cancer spread through direct contact, something extraordinarily rare in nature. Tasmanian devils communicate and compete in highly aggressive ways. They bite each other while fighting over food or during mating. When an infected devil bites a healthy one, living cancer cells can pass directly through the open wound. Tumors grow rapidly around the jaw and face, eventually preventing the animal from chewing and causing death from starvation or exhaustion within only a few months. The disease swept across Tasmania and reduced wild devil numbers by around 90% in less than 2 decades. Faced with the possibility of losing the species forever, Aussie Ark made a bold decision. Beginning in 2011, the organization moved a small group of healthy, disease-free devils away from Tasmania. They were brought to mainland Australia to establish an insurance population completely isolated from the outbreak. For 10 years, these devils were raised inside a large, securely isolated sanctuary. Human contact was kept to an absolute minimum. The animals had to learn to compete for food, dig their own dens, and live according to their natural instincts. By 2020, the population had grown to more than 200 individuals. By then, the moment had arrived. The next step was no longer simply about saving a species, but about beginning an ecological experiment on an unprecedented scale. On September 10, 2020, metal transport crates were carried deep into the Barrington Tops region of New South Wales. There, Aussie Ark had enclosed 400 hectares of forest, with advanced steel fencing anchored deep into the ground to prevent animals from digging underneath, while the top curved inward to stop climbers. All foxes and feral cats inside the enclosure had been removed. 26 Tasmanian devils, carrying some of the healthiest genetic lines, were brought in. When the metal doors opened, the devils took their first steps onto the dry leaf litter of mainland Australia in 3,000 years. They quickly scattered and disappeared into the dense eucalyptus forest. From that moment onward, humans stepped back. Radio collars around their necks became the only remaining connection. These animals would receive no food from humans. If they could not adapt, locate carcasses, or hunt small prey on their own, natural selection would remove them. The research team was deeply concerned. These animals had been born inside a protected, fenced environment. Did they still possess enough wild instinct to survive the harsh conditions outside human care? 8 months after their release, in May of 2021, researchers returned to conduct routine health checks on the females. What they discovered inside the pouches on their abdomens exceeded every theoretical prediction. Not only had the females survived in excellent condition, they were also carrying at least 7 developing joeys inside their pouches. This was extraordinarily important. It meant that in completely unfamiliar territory, within only a few months, these devils had independently explored the landscape, located food, marked territories, found mates, and reproduced without any medical intervention. Mainland Australia finally had its first naturally born generation of Tasmanian devils in thousands of years. But the hardest question was still ahead. Even if Tasmanian devils could survive, how could a mostly scavenging animal that is short, stocky, and relatively slow reduce populations of agile and highly adaptable feral cats? The discovery of how this species actually influences the ecosystem would completely reshape modern conservation thinking. Tasmanian devils do not actually go out of their way to hunt cats or foxes. Their stocky bodies evolved for strength, not speed. The secret to their survival and dominance lies in their powerful bite and their instinct to consume food sources completely. Relative to body weight, Tasmanian devils possess one of the strongest bites among carnivorous mammals on Earth. Their jaws can crush bone with ease. When a large kangaroo or wallaby dies in the forest, the smell of decaying flesh spreads through the area. Feral cats and foxes rely on that scent to locate leftover food. But Tasmanian devils often find the carcass first. Once they reach it, the cleanup begins. Skin, flesh, cartilage, internal organs, and even much of the skull can be completely consumed. They strip away nearly every edible part of the carcass, leaving very little behind. Once these easy food sources disappear, cats and foxes are forced to hunt for themselves. But that process can be disrupted by a psychological mechanism known as the landscape of fear. Tasmanian devils are highly active at night. While searching for food, they produce strange sounds, screeches, and threatening growls that echo through the forest. For feral cats, accustomed to absolute silence while stalking prey, the noise created by Tasmanian devils can generate intense stress. Camera trap data suggest that when Tasmanian devils are present, feral cats may be forced to change their behavior. Instead of concentrating entirely on hunting, the cats must remain constantly alert and adjust their activity patterns to reduce the chance of direct encounters. Moving under constant pressure can lower hunting success. With fewer carcasses available and hunting made more difficult by fear, cats and foxes may begin moving away from areas occupied by Tasmanian devils in search of easier territory. Simply by being present, patrolling their surroundings, and clearing away carcasses, Tasmanian devils can quietly pressure competitors without needing to engage in a violent confrontation. But if you think this project is only about me driving away feral cats, the larger goal is far more ambitious. Tasmanian devils are only the first step in a much broader plan. A natural ecosystem functions like the gears inside a clock. Remove one gear, and the entire system begins running out of rhythm. Humans cannot personally plant every tree or turn over every patch of soil to save a forest, but animals can perform those jobs naturally. After Tasmanian devils helped establish a safer zone and reduce pressure from invasive predators, Aussie Ark began returning 7 additional native species to this 400-hectare landscape. Potoroos and bettongs were released into the forest. Their natural behavior is to constantly dig through dry leaf litter and soft soil in search of fungi and plant roots. A single small animal can move enormous quantities of soil over the course of a year. This digging turns buried seeds toward the surface, mixes organic matter into the soil, and creates small channels that allow the ground to absorb rainfall far more effectively. Next, brush-tailed rock wallabies began feeding on grasses and shrubs, helping prevent vegetation from becoming excessively dense and reducing wildfire risk. Meanwhile, eastern quolls continued hunting insects and small animals, helping maintain balance within the food web. The larger picture finally became clear. Tasmanian devils acted as guardians, helping keep cats and foxes outside. Under that invisible protection, smaller, hard-working animals dug through the soil, spread seeds, cleared vegetation, and gradually rebuilt the structure of the forest from the ground up. But nature always finds harsh ways to test resilience. In 2025, an extreme weather event struck parts of New South Wales. Powerful storms brought flooding and snow, toppling numerous old trees and damaging sections of the protective fencing. Parts of the sanctuary were flooded. The conservation team had to immediately enter the forest and capture some of the devils so they could be moved to safety during the storm. Once conditions stabilized, the team cleared the damaged area and checked the health of each animal, treating parasites where necessary before releasing them back into the forest. The event provided an important practical lesson. This area is still a semi-wild environment. Humans must still intervene when physical barriers fail. The ultimate goal is not simply to maintain safety inside 400 hectares of protected land. The real objective is that one day, when the population is large enough and the ecosystem is strong enough, those fences can be removed entirely. At that point, Tasmanian devils and dozens of other native species could move outward, expand their territories, and once again help shape mainland Australia's ecosystem as they did 3,000 years ago. Instead of using weapons or chemicals to eliminate invasive species, restoring a missing piece of the ecosystem can produce remarkable regenerative effects. Tasmanian devils are not only reclaiming part of their former range, but also helping create space for many other native species to survive. The story of the Tasmanian devil is not simply an ecological success story in Australia. It is also a clear example of a modern conservation approach being used around the world, rewilding. Instead of relying entirely on expensive artificial interventions, humans are learning when to step back and return ecological control to native species. When the original structure of a food web is restored as accurately as possible, ecosystems can reveal an extraordinary ability to heal themselves and recover balance. For thousands of years, the absence of Tasmanian devils left a major ecological gap, creating opportunities for introduced species to disrupt the natural order. Now, by combining modern research tools with a deeper understanding of natural behavior, scientists are gradually repairing some of the damage left by the past. Mainland Australia is witnessing a quiet but significant shift in ecological power. These small, stocky devils are not merely fighting for their own survival. They are acting as ecosystem engineers, helping rebuild a more resilient environment. This large-scale project is still continuing. It will take many more decades to fully evaluate its effects if and when the physical fences are eventually removed. What do you think about this bold conservation strategy? Could using native animals to help control invasive species become a successful model in other countries as well? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more fascinating stories of scientific discovery and ecology.